this is Marianne coming to you today from King Shield Productions in balmy Lakeland, Florida. We know you guys up north are having a heck of a cold spell, so come on down here. And we have a special guest today. It's a real good friend. We've known Rodger for probably over 40 years. And we just wanted to do this interview with him. I consider it an honor to be with him.
Thank you.
And who are you, Rodger?
Rodger Bono from New York.
From New York. And now are you from close to Canada?
Real close. You can throw a stone in.
There you go. So you know that where he's from is very, very cold. That's why he's in Florida.
4 foot of snow last week.
Holy mackerel. Yeah, I guess they had a whiteout, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of snow and a lot of cold. So for all you people from up north that are watching this, come on down to Florida. It's pretty nice.
I got a call this morning. It's 60 there now.
Oh my God, that's a heat wave for
Yeah,
New York.
Snow will be gone by the time I get back.
Well, that'll be good news, right? He stayed long enough to get rid of the snow.
That's right.
So we're gonna ask Rodger some questions about his salvation before, how he came up, and we'll just kind of follow along. Okay, so what was your background even before you got saved?
Before I got saved, just went to school, played in bands, had some good times.
So did you were you ever in any trouble with the law or anything like that?
Not really. They never caught me.
And that's probably for all of us. Some of us did get caught and some of us didn't.
You're only in trouble if you get
If
caught.
you get caught, right. So anyways, so you were into drugs or drinking, or what was the deal?
I can't say I was heavy into drugs. I tried them. I didn't like anything I couldn't control, so
Right.
the harder drugs were out. Smoked some pot, played in the bands, did a lot of drinking.
Okay.
Carried on, had my Pontiac Bonneville convertible that I raced around the North Country in.
Slid around the North Country on the ice is more like it. What about now, we're going forward a little bit here, and we want to know what led you to, you obviously are born again, you know Jesus as your personal Savior.
Yep.
What led up to that?
Well, I got out of the drug scene when I married my wife.
Okay.
She had 4 children.
Okay.
And can't tell the kids stay out of them if you're doing them. So
Right.
that ended that scene. And basically, my wife got saved and started going to the Bible studies. And her being saved, I went to a couple Bible studies, honestly, just to shut her up. Happy wife, happy life. So,
There you go.
and then I wound up getting saved. I went to one of the Bible studies and was coming back, and actually with your husband in the car.
Yeah.
And we were both seeing the Spirit of God on all the way back from Watertown into Carthage. And I could actually hear him talking to me. And we're kind of looking at him, don't you hear that?
Wow.
And it was an amazing night.
Okay, so let's get into what the Spirit of God was saying to you that only you could hear.
I was questioning whether or not I believed in him or not, whether I believed the whole thing. And so he basically, I was working electronics at the time, in the electronic field. And there was on the way back in the car, it was just, why it's so hard for you to believe in me? And I says, I've never seen you. And he said to me, you've never seen electricity flow through that line, but you believe in it. And if you don't, grab a hold of it and find out how real it is.
That's great.
And then he said to me, and if you grab a hold of me, you'll find out how real I am.
Nice.
And that I could understand. It was an analogy that I could book into, because you grab an electric wire, you know it's real even though you can't see it.
Right.
And it was the same thing. It was the same principle.
Okay, so some people would say out there that are watching this, some people are watching us that aren't believers, and they would say, well, that's just your head. That's just you talking to you. How did you know that that was God and not your own head talking to your own head?
Because I'm not that smart.
Great.
Honestly, it was just a voice I could hear. And it was soft. It wasn't loud and booming. It wasn't no traumatic thing.
But it was real
But
to
I
you.
know those thoughts were not my thoughts. I didn't think like that.
Right.
So for that to enter into my mind, I said, this is something different.
Okay, so at that point, did you just bow your head and say the sinner's prayer with my husband Michael, or did you go home and did you do that?
It was about 2 weeks later
2 weeks later.
that
So that was the seed that was planted.
that was the start. And I went home and I just kept thinking about it and thinking about different things, and it seemed like everywhere I looked I seen God. And my dad was a hunter, and he always used to say, if you want to get close to God, get out on his creation.
Right.
And I remembered a couple things he had said to me, and he never taught God. He wasn't didn't push you to go to church or anything. But we discussed it one time, and I said to him, I found out he had cancer, and I said to him, Dad, did you make your peace with God? And of course he had fought all the way through World War II, and he says, you don't think I laid in those foxholes and read my Bible? He says, that little Bible they give you, you read it from cover to cover several times, and he said, I made my peace with God a long time ago, and I promised him that if he got me out of the war safe and sound.
Which he did.
Which he did. He got shot, but it actually saved his life, because they got him out in a medevac, and 2 days later they got surrounded in Bastogne where he was.
Wow.
And they lost most of the 101st.
Wow.
And he'd have probably died trying to save that bridge they were setting up.
Wow. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, how God works?
Yep.
Sometimes I think there's some of you thinking that, God's not in the picture. It looks like some bad stuff's happening, and so you question, well, is God there? Is he real? Is he actually doing, what, he loves me. How come this horrible stuff is happening to me? So we're going to go into some stuff that happened in Rodger's life, and we're going to go a little deeper, and we're going to discuss some of that stuff. Okay, so we're looking right here this time. Everything's just changed. Now, so you got saved 2 weeks later, and your whole life became this big fantasy life, and everything was fabulous.
Oh, yeah, right.
That'll be in the next show.
I got challenged.
Okay, so what was going on?
Well, basically, we wound up going to quite a large church in Watertown, and they were putting on plays. They used to do plays, and they did one called Soldier's Song.
Right.
And very dramatic, and I got involved with that because they found out I had a music background. So they used me to play some of the music. They used me to run the mixing board. And I did that play, I think, for 8 years in a row.
You know what? I think that's the one, wasn't that the one with the centurion and the guards? And
right.
That was probably, I remember that, and that was before I was saved, and that was pretty dramatic.
Yeah, the centurion that actually stabbed Jesus.
Right. Our daughter, Tammy, which he has a daughter named Tammy too, but our daughter Tammy, when she was at that play, she was 4 years old, and she started screaming, Mommy, you have to do something. We had to take her out of that play because it was so realistic.
It was pretty lifelike, yeah.
It was a great production.
Yeah, I get cold chills thinking about it.
Me too.
But we had, usually every time we did that play, for about 8 years, we'd have probably 100 people a night come forward. And so we run that thing 4 weeks in a row. So, there was 400 or 500 people that were saved every time we put that production on.
Right.
So it was a good thing, and I got involved with the Faith Fellowship Band. Was a band that used to travel around and do street ministry. And the pastor that was involved with that, I can remember he would get slain in the spirit, fall down on the floor or on the street, and the rest of us would pick him up and hustle him away, finish the ministry. But he was really spirit-filled and just on fire for God, and his excitement led us to burn as well,
That's so nice. That's so nice. What's it say? Get on fire and just watch everything burn around you?
Well, if you want to get on fire for the Lord, get around other people that are on fire for the Lord.
I agree.
And it's infecting. Like, one person laughs and smiles, everybody starts laughing and smiles.
So what happens if that's the case, then what would be the opposite? If you're around people that aren't plugged in.
Oh, if you got around negative people and people that are always nasty, it rubs off.
Absolutely, and that's unfortunate. In fact, sometimes that seems to rub off quicker than the other.
That's, the Bible says we're supposed to be the salt,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to flavor them, but too
Right.
many times it goes the other direction.
Yeah.
And
Bad company corrupts good character.
it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Okay, so now you're in the ministry, you're starting to do stuff, 8 years in this church, and then somehow you got into the prison ministry, and this is what I really want to get into.
Yes, I took the classes. This particular church had night classes to help people that wanted to become ministers.
So what led up to you? I mean, listen, it takes somebody really called to go to prison and want to go.
Yeah, I was involved with the Full Gospel, and the head of the Full Gospel Eastern Coast Division was a friend of mine, John Barone.
Right.
And he started to get us involved when they opened up the prison up on the top of the hill in Watertown.
Okay, so I got a question. What did you feel like the first time that door shut?
It didn't really get to me as much as it would. It was kind of funny, since you asked. The first time we went up there was only 6 inmates in the prison.
Holy
because
cow.
it was brand new. They
What
just
prison
built
was
it.
that?
That was Watertown Correctional.
Wow.
And they just built it, so there's only like 6 or 8 or 10. And I said to John when we were walking in that they had pallets going across the mud so that you could walk in. The sidewalks weren't in yet. And we went down to the chapel, and I said to John, "There's only 6 guys here at the thing." He says, "Well, if only one hears it, it's worth it." And I says, "But is it worth it?" Because he had a stroke and he had a hard time walking. I says, "Is it worth it for you to come up here for that?" And I says, for just 6 people in the chapel? But he says, "Rodger," he was a little Italian guy, didn't speak good English. He says, "Rodger, have you heard the mouth on those corrections officers and those people building this place? They're terrible." He says, "I'm in here for them." He said, "If not, they're going to be in this prison too." And he was kind of funny, but if he could get one person to listen, he was happy little camper.
So the moral of the story is if you swear, you're going to prison.
Yeah, and he's the only one that I knew that if you sat down in a restaurant to pray for the meal, you could hear him 6 blocks away.
Wow.
He
You wanted to
prayed
make sure everybody around
very
him was-
loud and very open, and I wished I had that,
Yeah.
to be able to do that sort of thing. And of course, if anybody come over, and ask him, he'd say, "Well, do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior?" And it didn't matter, waitress or another patron, whatever. Very bold.
What's really neat is that he would be willing to do and take that trip, probably hurting and not feeling bad, feeling kind of rough himself for 6 people.
Yep.
And still say, this is worth me doing it. And that's the difference between somebody getting paid to do a job and somebody called to do a job.
Yes, and he had a wonderful testimony. The reason he had a stroke is that he was one of the test subjects for the nuclear bombs out in White Sands, New Mexico.
Wow.
He was a medic, and they put him in a trench, and he was less than a mile
Wow.
from ground zero, and lived through it. But
So it wasn't even something he did to himself. It was something
no, there
that
was
kind of done.
250 people in his outfit, and only 10 were still alive.
Wow.
The rest had all died of cancer.
Now, was he saved before that?
Yeah, he knew the Lord since he was a child.
He was a kid.
He grew up in New York City, and he was Italian family.
No
And,
wonder he got saved. He's probably afraid he was going to be killed.
well, a lot of his family was in the mafia.
Oh, boy.
And,
Like I said.
so he lived and learned, and he got saved early, but just because of their link to the Catholic Church, and
Right.
they were
Right.
very
Okay,
involved.
so you're doing all this stuff. So tell us a story tell us what really sticks out. I know, how long were you in the prison ministry?
I was in prison ministry 15 years.
Wow. Okay, so did you always go in and sing, or did you just preach, or?
I went in and led worship at first, and then the pastor that was there would not allow me to teach because I was of a different church. He
How
was
crazy is that?
Yeah, he was in Assemblies, and I was Pentecostal. And so before
I
he
thought
would,
the Assembly of God was Pentecostal.
it is, but they wanted everything he taught. He wanted it to be
Out of the book?
Assemblies based.
Yeah.
So I actually got licensed and ordained at my church, and then I wound up getting licensed and ordained by the Assemblies so that I could
Just
teach.
to make sure.
So that I could teach at the prison ministry. And I said, "Well, we'll cover all the bases, and
Oh
they won't
my
have an
God.
excuse."
Well,
And-
hey, covering all the bases means you have to get baptized in the Baptist church. You have to go to a Pentecostal church to get the Holy Spirit of God, and then you get ordained by all of them so
Well,
you can preach in them. That's
I-
how insane that
I
is.
tried to. I used to teach prison ministry, like churches that wanted to get involved. I was in a group that we went out and taught people how to get involved in prison ministry. And of course, your chaplain, you got to go through your chaplains. And I did that for quite a while. And the first thing you do is you get the tenets of faith of that church, so that
Right.
you don't go in there and do something stupid like start speaking in tongues
Oh,
at
yeah.
a Baptist church.
I've done that too.
Yeah. So you always want to know what's going on in those churches.
Right. You don't want to offend anybody.
That's it. And I got favor. I worked in about probably 20 some churches
Wow.
and got them involved. And even in the Catholic Church, I got in
That's
there.
great.
They let me preach from their pulpit,
Mhm.
which is a rare thing, and it
Absolutely.
was God showing me favor.
Hmm.
But I would ask them straight up, what's your tenets of faith? What do you believe in?
So tell me you just said something interesting. It was God showing you favor. For those people out here that don't know what that is, what is that?
Well, that's when the Lord you pray about it, and the Lord will open doors for you, so that the people that you have to get involved with, no matter what church, whether it be a pastor of that church, or whether it be one of the ministers from the Catholic Church, or whoever's in charge of that, give you favor means that right off the bat you find something in common
Right.
that clicks, and you make friends of them,
Right.
and then they
So
will
then
allow
you can
they allow you in the church and do what you got to do.
praise the Lord. Okay, so he's doing all the stuff. He's been in there for 15 years. Life is fabulous because it's just not probably really fabulous, but because inside he has fabulous going on. Because your real joy comes from inside. It doesn't come from your circumstances outside, because they're never going to be fabulous. So you're into this and you're doing this, and then what happened? What was the traumatic thing that happened that made you question who you were, who God was, and your faith? What was the attack?
Well, I had prayed for quite a while that, Lord, I'd like to get to some of these people before they get in prison.
Right.
Before they get arrested, before they because a lot of inmates, once they get out, become repeat offenders.
Mhm.
They're back within 5 years.
And why do you think that is?
Well, because when they get out of prison, up our way, the only jobs they could get, because people would be judgmental, the only jobs they could get is Burger King or McDonald's or working as a mechanic somewhere.
If they can even get them.
And so I had an inmate tell me, he says, why should I go into McDonald's flipping burgers for $10 an hour when I can do $2,000 a day on the street?
I've heard that too.
And I said, yeah, but the point is you're going to wind up back here. He says, oh, no. He said, the reason I got caught last time is because I was doing the drugs. This time I'm not going to do the drugs. I'm just going to sell them. Well, that's a lie.
What deception? What a grand deception. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just do it a little different and you'll be okay. Isn't that just fabulous?
If you're selling drugs, you're going to use drugs.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10, well, not that many, but 7 out of 10 will be back within 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and eventually, if you're a big fish, they want the big fish. They
Yep.
don't want the little ones, so they'll bypass some of the little ones just to get to the big one. So the deception is, go ahead, you can still do wrong. Nobody will catch you, or it's going to be different this time, and it never is. It's always the same outcome.
That's it. And so I left that, the prison ministry. I had prayed about it and said, I'd like to get to some of these people before they're in prison. And the prison system was changing. They were setting up hub systems
Right,
where you had to work in 3-4 different prisons at a time.
right.
And you become just an administrator instead of actually ministering and
Kinda
praying with
bad,
people.
huh?
And I didn't like that part of it. I didn't want to sit and, it was nice. I got into the anger management control. I got into drug and alcohol counseling. Marriage counseling was a big thing in prison that I did. And I just said, I got into the Scared Straight program, helped start that in
That's
the
a great
Watertown
program.
area.
Yep.
And it led me, it says, I want to get away from the inmates and get to the kids before they.
Yeah.
So there was an opening in the children's home that in Watertown, and they actually did kids that were in trouble for whatever reason, stealing or not going to school, pins, petitions, or whatever. and they needed some people to work there, and so I got a job down there and did another 11 years
Wow.
at the children's home, and I was working with the kids on a one-to-one basis, and it was good. It was.
I think that's equivalent to what Florida has as the Sheriff's Youth Ranch.
Yep.
We have something like that down here where they're like kids at risk.
Yep.
It's not the real bad stuff, it's the kids that are just starting down the wrong path.
Right.
Because maybe their parents are messed up or they don't have a home or whatever.
Well, these
the
kids were,
situation may
you know,
be.
they took in orphans as well, but the main thing they took in was troubled
Do you
kids.
ever want to take anybody home?
I raised 10 kids.
Is the answer no?
Only 4 were mine. The rest were taken.
He'd had
so,
enough.
Yeah, 10 kids was enough. That was it. But it was all good. I liked working with them. I liked working in the residential units, and I got to do some good relationships with the kids. And it was because I never ever lied to a kid.
Right.
You know, if the kid was in trouble and they were about to ship him out and send him to a lockup facility, if they asked me, I'd tell them, yeah, you're going to lockup
Yeah.
because you don't know how to get along without punching somebody in the face or threatening them.
No boundaries.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
No boundaries.
I never lied, and I still have some of the kids. I've been out of that now over 15 years, and I still have kids that call me up
That's pretty amazing.
and say, you know, hey, Rodger, I'm doing this now, and I'm doing that now, and I got 3 kids, and but they always remembered it, you know.
You know what I think too, that goes to show that when God calls you to something, sometimes it's not even just the same thing. Bing, bing, it must be God. But sometimes it's not the same thing. Sometimes there's seasons of times for different things in your life.
Yes.
So, you know, if you have this season of your life and all of a sudden you feel in your spirit or your heart you're being called somewhere else, and you know that that's not you or bad pizza, then that's where you start going.
Or bad
you know?
pizza.
Well, you know, sometimes you get feelings or you get people
Yeah.
prophesying over you. God says, go to Cambodia and sell everything to me. You know, you don't want to listen to that because that's baloney.
Nope.
But I think sometimes with 2 or 3 witnesses, everything will be established. And sometimes you do change kind of lanes, you know. And so if you're feeling like you're lane changing and you don't want to let go of the old, I mean, I don't think he ever really let go of the old because he still probably gets to see people now, and still he can still pray for the inmates that he ministered
That's
to.
it. People tell me my personality, I'm a pit bull, because when I sink my teeth in, I don't let go until death.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good analogy for me. I don't like to let go of anything. The reason I got out of the children's home and out of the prison ministry was I was helping the pastor start a new church,
Right.
and we were getting people involved, and it was a seminary training facility to train people to become preachers. So I was getting used pretty heavy in the training end of that,
Right.
and it just, well, my wife told me, she says, you know, you got a wife and 4 kids, and you're gone 5 nights a week or 6 nights a week in the ministry. Don't you think we need to change something? And
Well,
she
and
was
you know
right.
what?
She was right.
That is the actual word for a lot of pastors that might be watching, because you know what, you feel so needed with these, because they do need you.
You burn out.
They're detrimental situations and they're emergency situations, and these people are just pulling and pulling and
Yes.
pulling. But that's why I think so many pastors are going out and cheating. They're leaving their church, they're leaving their faith, they're leaving their ministries because they are burned out.
Yep.
They're tired.
If you're going, you know, our church right now is going 6 nights a week.
That's a lot.
And I just simply told the pastor that's there, I ordained him and got him in there, but he's a young man,
Yeah.
and he's just on fire for God. And I just told him straight up, I said, I can't be here 5, 6 nights a week.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I've got to cut down to 2 or 3.
Right.
And I used to wear 5 hats in that church.
Yeah.
And I said that I only want to wear this one.
Right.
It's time for me to retire and go to Florida.
Right. There you
So
go.
that's why
so
I'm
glad
here.
you came.
That's why I'm here.
We love having you.
Yeah.
Okay, so forward to a couple years ago, you had something very hard happen in your life.
Yes.
Caused you to question some things.
Yeah. The last 2 years have been the biggest test of my faith in the 40 years I've been saved. And that was my wife had developed giant cell arteritis, which is a disease. It's an autoimmune disorder where the white blood cells attack the arteries in your brain.
Wow.
And it caused her to have dementia. And dementia is, a lot of people think it makes you forget things, but dementia is terrible in the fact that it eats on the muscles in your body, and basically your muscles become gel.
Wow.
And my wife got to where she couldn't walk any longer, so she was in a wheelchair. She never forgot my name, but she forgot a lot of things in the house. And I was taking care of her. And I was surviving on about 2 hours sleep a night because she would get up in the middle of the night and try to do things. And she burned herself quite badly once, and I felt so bad about it. And so I used to sleep with my feet where she would go around me in the wheelchair and she'd run over my feet or run into them
To wake you up.
to wake me up. Well, I had done that for about 5 years, and then one day I got up to go get ready to go to church, and I collapsed
Wow.
and woke up some hours later, and my son was there. He helped me off the floor. And what had happened is I had taken some medicine for the flu. It was a drug. Well, I can't name the drug because we're on the air. But I took that particular drug, and it had completely shut my kidneys down, and I didn't know it.
Wow.
And by the time I got to the hospital, my kidneys had shut down, my pancreas had shut down, and my liver was shutting down.
So you were on the way out.
Yeah, the doctor, 4 days I was unconscious.
Now, did you see a light?
I seen a lot of things.
Did you see a light?
Yeah,
Did you?
actually, I did, but it wasn't like a lot of people say. I see the light and I was headed toward it, or none of that. I just know I was out 4 days, and they did emergency surgery and put a line in so they could put me on dialysis. And I woke up 4 days later, and the doctor said, "Welcome back."
Wow.
And I said, "Welcome back from what?" And he said, "You've been out 4 days. We thought we were going to lose you." And he said, "Your body had shut down, and we're surprised you made it back." He said, "You've had 3 heart attacks," and he said, your toxic levels in your blood was so high. He says, "We can't understand why your heart kept beating."
We know why.
Yes, God was not finished with me yet.
That's right.
And but when you wake up from that, and he tells you almost died, a lot of things go through your mind.
Such as?
Well, the first thing I did was call up all my friends and thank them for being my friends.
Mm-hmm.
You guys got a call, some other people got a call. Because you realize that's what's important to you. Not the car you drive,
Right.
not the house you live in, but it's the friends you had.
The relationships.
The other thing that really jarred me is when I woke up, I was in that hospital a couple of weeks, and then they sent me back up to Watertown for therapy because I couldn't walk any longer. I had lost the ability to walk.
And in the meantime, where is your wife?
Well, this is what I'm coming to. When I got into the facility where I was going to do my therapy, my wife was in the room next to me.
Wow.
And
In the same hospital.
the same hospital, and I was very angry because
Angry at God, angry at your family, angry at Mary, angry at yourself, angry at work.
all the above.
All
I
the above.
was angry at God. I was angry at my family because I was in the hospital just 2-3 weeks, and I find my wife in a nursing home.
Right.
And I said, "You couldn't take care of my wife for the few weeks that I was in
Right.
the hospital?" And the answer they give me, and it kind of broke my heart. They said, "They told us you probably weren't going to come out of this."
Wow.
And I knew their plan because I was in the nursing home
Right.
next to my wife, sharing rooms,
Right.
and their plan was we'd probably spend the rest of our lives there.
Right.
And I refused to accept that. I was angry that they
Say
put
that
her
again,
in.
please.
I refused to accept that.
I think that's a big key to getting better. You've got to refuse to stay in the hole.
That's right.
You've got to refuse.
That's right. I said, I am going to get my legs back. I am going to walk. I'm going to do what needs to be done to get my life back because I wasn't content staying in a nursing home.
Good.
And I wasn't happy with my wife there.
Right.
And I had promised her that as soon as I got well enough, I would get her out of there.
Right.
And so I did the parallel bars till I had blisters on my hands, trying to get my legs back. I wasn't content with being in a wheelchair. I wasn't content with walking with a walker.
Good.
I says, I'll walk with a cane if that's what I got to do.
Right.
But I'm going to get my life back. Well, within 21 days, I was in the wheelchair, but they sent me home.
Wow.
And within 2 months, I was walking with a walker. 4 months later, I was walking with a cane. It's been a year, and I no longer have the cane.
Hallelujah.
And I drove to Florida.
There you go. And this is part of his healing as well, because it's not just physically getting healed, it's emotionally getting healed. Because when you go through that kind of stuff, it's called trauma.
Yes.
And trauma traumatizes you, and that Satan's whole objective to doing that is to sink you in the hole and keep you down there. God's objective is to make sure that you raise again, just like Jesus did on the third
That's
day.
it. I had a major time with depression. In the meantime, while I was recovering, my wife passed away in the nursing home. I went back to her and I apologized. This before she died. I apologized to her that I broke my promise that I would get her home with me, and
You didn't break the promise.
it never
Roger.
happened.
Yeah, but you didn't break the promise.
But she passed away that year in the nursing home, and I was angry. I was angry at God that I got sick. I was angry at God that she was in a nursing home, and I was angry that she developed cancer and died while she was there.
How did you get over the anger? How'd you get over the feelings and the emotions and all the crazy crap that's happening in your head?
Well, it was my habit to go to church every Sunday. And I got into church, and I remember the first week I went back into church that I could actually walk and get in there. And I looked over where my wife and I sat, and she wasn't there. And it just jarred me to no end that my wife wasn't sitting beside me.
Yeah.
And I just knelt down to God, and I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to learn from this thing. And I just in tears praying and asking God, why do we have to go through this? Because there wasn't a nicer woman in the world than my wife.
Right.
She was so good and so faithful. And I just couldn't understand it. And I questioned it for about 6 months. Fought the battle. And I said, you know what? I've got to come through on the other side of this. I can't let this consume my life.
And you know, for those of you that are going through some real hard times and you're like right in the middle of that questioning, I heard this last night and I thought this was amazing. A TV preacher was saying this, that your trial or your tribulation that you're going through has an expiration date. I think when you're in the middle of it, you think it's never going to expire. You think you're never going to come out. You're never going to feel any different. You're always going to be in the hole and it's always going to be bad. But if you realize that there is an expiration date, you can almost come through anything.
Well, that's the thing. I said, you know what? I made the promise to take care of my wife until death. And I did that.
And you did that.
And I was ready to go. I said, Lord, take me anytime.
And God says, not yet.
Well, I was very depressed, and I shared this with my elder, and he looked right at me and he said, you know, that's stinking thinking. And he said, you got to get past that. And so I surrounded myself with positive people.
There you go.
Surrounded myself with people that had things for me to do to get my mind off that.
Right. And just recently we sat on our brother-in-law and sister-in-law's porch and we sang for 3 hours. And Roger said he could only sing for like 5 songs was the max, and then he'd lose his voice. And 3 hours later, he's still singing.
But it sounded awful.
Oh, no, it wasn't. It was fun. We just didn't know the end. We didn't know verse 2 and 3, only one.
Yeah, we sang 25 songs, the first verse of all of them. But they were good.
They were good, absolutely. Well, so bottom line is perseverance, continuing, staying faithful even when you don't feel like being faithful.
You've got to get your mind in the proper mind frame. You can't stay on that negative stuff.
And so it is a battle, right?
I was on Facebook and I found a thing, and it had talked about, are you going to live in your past life with your broken dreams?
There you go.
Or are you going to look ahead into that? And I read it and I thought about it and I said, you know, that's right. I can't sit here and wallow in my broken dreams in the past.
That's right.
I've got to move forward. But it's hard to do.
And what was the thing that you said when you first got here? One of the reasons, there was a couple different dually reasons, and you only gave us one of why you came here.
Why I came to Florida. I was going through all my first Thanksgiving without her, my first Christmas without her, And my wife and I used to travel a lot together. We'd been out west several times. We've been down here several times. So this is my first trip without her.
There you go.
And I had to get all those first out of the way
Right.
so that I could move on. And I said I wanted to look maybe into coming down this way to live. You know, because the old house up there is getting tired, and I'm getting tired, and I'm tired of the snow. So I said, I need to get some laughter. I need to see some friends.
You came to the right place.
Yeah, so I come down here. We had a good time. We picked on each other. We laughed.
Right.
You know, you told me the story about your hissing rabbit. And, you know, it was all funny stuff.
Right.
And that helped me mentally. Just breaking away from the cold winter is a big thing that helped. And just the fact of moving forward with the rest of my life. And when I get back, I'm gonna
Continue to move forward.
well, I'm gonna preach some hellfire and brimstone.
You're all going to hell.
Scare them off, and then no, I'm gonna move back, and I got some sermons over this trip.
Don't
learned-
have a hissing rabbit.
No, and I went to a couple, 3 different churches and found out what they're doing down here.
Right.
Now I want to go back there and preach. The last Sunday, the church I went to, the preacher was barefoot.
Right. That's
And,
pretty fabulous.
Yeah, and blue jeans and a hoodie. So I said, you know, I come from the conservative Northeast,
Right.
where you still wear your suits to
Right.
church.
What a shock it is down here, right?
Well, I'm going to go in
We're
and
all too hot down here to wear a suit and tie.
I'm gonna go into the church and preach a sermon in a hoodie and the blue jeans. I can't go barefoot because there's still 4 foot of snow
Oh
up
my
there.
gosh, you'll get
But,
frostbite.
Yeah, but do some changes. I'm gonna do
Good.
some changes.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you very much for this. And the moral of the story here today is to persevere and to continue. No matter what you're going through, stop looking at where you're at. Jesus said, I put before you life and death. You choose life. God bless you. So long.